Hi, and welcome to today's Daily Chronicle. Today is Monday, November 10th, 2025. Trump admin states to immediately undo steps to fund November SNAP benefits. Jen Jansek Hartman helps prepare bagged meals for a food bank for students in Nueva Hidatsa Sanish College on Thursday, October 30th, 2025, in Newtown, North Dakota. The Trump administration late Saturday directed states that they must immediately undo any actions they have made to provide benefits to low-income families via the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP. To the extent states sent full SNAP payment files for November 2025, this was unauthorized. Accordingly, states must immediately undo any steps taken to issue full SNAP benefits for November 2025. The U.S. Department of Agriculture said in a release, "Please advise the appropriate FNS regional office representative of steps taken to correct any actions taken that do not comply with this memorandum." The directive follows an administrative stay granted by the U.S. Supreme Court. Late Friday, temporarily blocking a lower court order that ordered the Trump administration to pay SNAP benefits in full for November. The High Court said its order would last until the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit acted on the administration's request in that court for stay. Some UPS and FedEx planes are grounded. What does that mean for holiday shipping? The Federal Aviation Administration has ordered all McDonnell Douglas MD-11 aircraft grounded pending further inspection, following UPS and FedEx each deciding to ground the planes that make up part of their cargo fleet. The FAA's emergency directive on Saturday prohibits MD-11 aircraft because it has determined the unsafe condition is likely to exist or develop in other products of the same type design. The grounding comes after a UPS MD-11 plane crashed shortly after takeoff in Louisville, Kentucky last week, killing 14 people. Through the MD-11s make up a small share of UPS and FedEx cargo fleet. Some aviation experts say that depending on how long the MD-11s are grounded, it could delay holiday deliveries. The cause of the crash is still under investigation. Boeing on Friday said in a statement that operators of MD-11 aircraft should suspend flight operations recommendation while additional engineering analysis is performed, adding the recommendation is an abundance of caution. Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas in 1997. Here is what to know about the MD-11 and holiday shipping. The MD-11s make up a small percentage of cargo fleet. The MD-11s were first introduced The MD-11s were first introduced in 1986, and service flights began in December 1990, with the last MD-11 aircraft being manufactured in 2000, according to Boeing. UPS said that in 2023 that it would be replacing MD-11 aircraft with more efficient Boeing 767 aircraft, according to FlightWaves. Over the last 3 years, FedEx has retired 20 MD-11 aircraft and had plans to retire the rest of its fleet by fiscal year 2032. John Dietrich, the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of FedEx Corporation, said in March. Out of more than 500 aircraft that UPS uses, only 26 of them are MD-11s. According to the shipping company, FedEx said that it has 28 MD-11s out of about 700 aircraft in its fleet. Western Global Airlines, an air cargo company, also uses MD-11 aircraft in its fleet. NPR reached out to Western Global Airlines for comment, but has not received a response. Holiday deliveries could be impacted. Both UPS and FedEx told NPR contingency plans are in place to minimize disruption in deliveries. The companies did not share details, but some aviation experts told NPR that some cargo will be shifted to passenger planes, trains, and trucks. Jeremy Tancredi, a partner who specializes in supply chain issues at consulting firm West Monroe, and who previously worked for UPS as an industrial engineer, said there could still be an impact on deliveries during the holiday season. At the peak volume increases, you need every bit of transportation capacity. Not having 26 planes could be a real big factor for them. Tancredi told NPR. Each MD-11 aircraft used by UPS can carry 20,000 packages, the company said. While the MD-11s are a small part of the UPS and FedEx fleet, the delivery impacts could also depend on how long the aircrafts are grounded, said Mike Stengel, a partner at the Aerodynamic Advisory. If the grounding is extended more than a week or two, then it creeps up on the holidays. There definitely is the possibility of packages getting delayed, Stengel told NPR. The FAA directive to airports to reduce flights as the government shutdown lingers and air traffic controllers go without pay should not impact deliveries. Stengel also said the cargo carriers have been generally insulated from the recent reductions in the caps that the FAA has placed in flight activity just the past few days. Because the caps are generally for flights during the day, whereas UPS and FedEx generally fly in the middle of the night. Stengel told NPR, so there isn't the same air traffic controllers in the middle of the night. Deliveries are expected to jump 5% during the holiday season compared to the 2024 holiday season, with a 2.3 billion packages estimated to be delivered, according to consulting and analytics company ShipMatrix. It is unclear whether UPS or FedEx will adjust holiday shipping deadlines because of the MD-11 aircrafting grounding. Tancredi has advice for those looking to send packages to loved ones during the holidays. Shop early. With the rail network taking on more capacity with the ground network, and trucks taking on more capacity, there's still time to order online and get your holiday packages there, he said. It's as if I've been reborn. Mitzi Copeland begins the next chapter in a new body. It's not easy watching your body change over the years. But professional ballerina Mitzi Copeland says, I love a challenge. It's a beautiful thing to be able to see your body change, to acknowledge that it's changed, and that it is different, and that you value movement in a different way, Copeland explains. Practicing classical ballet technique after having her son in 2022, she says, it's as if I've been reborn and I have a new body to try it through. Copeland took her final bow with American Ballet Theatre in October, after spending years away from performance. In 2015, Copeland made history as the first Black woman to become a principal dancer at American Ballet Theatre. It was the culmination of a journey that began not in a traditional ballet academy, but in a Boys and Girls Club gym in Los Angeles, where a shy teenager first discovered what her body could say through movement. Being on stage was the first time that I felt safe in my young life, Copeland says. I've always felt protected when I was on stage. But ballet can be brutal on a dancer's body, Copeland says. She reached a breaking point at the beginning of 2020, which caused her to step away. I just felt like I needed to pause and really figure out what was going to make me feel fulfilled and good about using all I've built. My voice and my platform and my reach, she says. In 2022, she founded the Mitzi Copeland Foundation, which aims to build pathways for children who've never seen themselves reflected on a ballet stage. That same year, she also became a mother. She says giving birth without pain medication was easier than some of her dance performances. I just kind of locked in and was like, oh, I know this feeling of preparation, of mental preparation and preparing yourself for the pain and breathing through the pain, she says. I still don't think that anything compares to Swan Lake. Copeland began preparing for her farewell performance with ABT a year ago. It was a way to get her body back in shape, but more than that, it was a way to give back to a community that has given her so much. The reason I agreed to having the farewell performance was because I wanted to say thank you to the dance community, the Black community, all the people who have spent their hard-earned money and flown from their hometowns to come support me. Copeland says, what I represented is far bigger than me. I've always known that. Interview highlights on her relationship to pain. I think that's something I learned as a child. So many things in my childhood, whether they're good or bad, they prepared me to be in this position. I think about always feeling uncomfortable, whether it was in the living circumstances that we were in my own skin, feeling so much shame around not having a home or food on the table, so I didn't keep friends close. Like, I just felt like I was never comfortable and was always kind of dealing with that, navigating, but like keeping a happy face on the outside. I think anyone who knew me would say she was very quiet, but she was always very happy. And I had severe migraines growing up, and I remember I would have to leave school early, sometimes, like to the point of vomiting, and it was just like all this stress that I held inside, but somehow was able to still remain very pleasant on the outside. I think pain is just a part of what we are used to dealing with as performers and as dancers, and so it just kind of comes with that territory. Even in my last performance with ABT, I was barely walking before, and somehow, muster up the strength. I found out in preparation for the performance that I have bone spurs in my left hip, and a labral tear and loss of cartilage. And my doctors, they were just like, I don't think this is a good idea for you to push for this performance. And I said, well, I've already agreed to it. On painting her own point shoes to match her skin early in her career. The first time I ever did it, I must have been 14, performing with Debbie Allen, a mentor of mine, in her version of the Nutcracker, which at the time she was calling the Chocolate Nutcracker. And that was the very first time that I was understanding what the ballet shoe even represents and what the tights mean, and in an extension of yourself and your skin, and it should be the same color. I was wearing brown tights then and painting my shoes, but I would continue to do that throughout the course of my career at ABT, and I would just go to the drugstore and get the cheapest liquid foundation and put it on my shoes. It's not meant to be danced in, and it doesn't have the right ingredients and consistency. It can be very slippery. But it's the first thing that young dancers receives is their leotard, their ballet slippers, and their tights. And that's just right there saying for a black or brown dancer, this isn't for you. You don't belong. On why she dances without pads in her point shoes. When I started dancing, I wore lamb's wool or whatever kind of padding is what you put in your shoes. That was with my first ballet teacher. When I moved to my second ballet school where I was training, I think I was about 15 when I moved to that school. She didn't allow for us to wear anything in our shoes. She said she could see the loss of the articulation in the toes. Like when you have something between your foot and the shoe that you don't have as much as control. I remember just being so terrified of her because she could tell if I snuck a little bit of tissue or anything in my shoe. I would go up on point and she would say, Mitzi, there's something in your shoe. I'm like, how does she know? She must be a witch. I agree wholeheartedly at this point, but preparing for this performance after having 5 years off and losing all of my calluses, I had to put something over my toes. It wasn't a pad. I was wearing a thin paper towel because I didn't have enough time to really build up all the calluses that I had lost over a lifetime of training by not being in point shoes. But it definitely makes a difference. On collaborating with Prince, he was my biggest supporter. He showed me what it was to be one of a kind, to be unique, to be proud to stand within his uniqueness, and to use that as a power, whereas before I felt isolated and alone. He really saw it as the opposite. He's like, you have such an advantage. He's like, you're the only brown girl out there. Everyone's going to look at you. Now what are you going to do? And then just exploring his artistry by working with him, I think made me grow in leaps and bounds as a dancer. On her body changing after pregnancy and birth, I can focus on different things because my body can't do the things that it once did. It's like learning it again. It's like learning to dance again. It's learning the ballet technique again. And it keeps getting fresh and exciting, and it's challenging. Why do some leaves turn red in the fall? Scientists can't agree with an answer. Fallen leaves show their autumn colors as they float on a puddle on a raining morning in Overland Park, Kansas. Researchers have yet to agree on why some trees' leaves go to the trouble of turning red before falling to the ground. This is the time of year when Nicole Hughes gets constantly distracted by the fall foliage as she drives around North Carolina. I'm always looking, says Hughes, a biologist at the High Point University, just seeing what turned colors when and what hasn't turned. Part of her brain is endlessly searching for clues about one of the biggest mysteries of autumn leaves: why the leaves of only some trees turn red. We still don't really know why some species turn red and others don't, she says. She's made a career out of studying this, even though her interest in red leaves goes back even further. Growing up, she says, my dad was always talking about his quest for the perfect red leaf. Every autumn, trees break down the green chlorophyll in their leaves so that they can recover precious nitrogen before the leaves fall. That nitrogen is necessary for photosynthesis, as well as building proteins and DNA. The loss of this chlorophyll exposes yellow pigments that have been there in the leaves all along. That makes yellow leaves easy to explain. But the red color is different. It comes from brand new chemicals that are generated just days before a leaf plunges to the ground. The red was not there beforehand, or you would have seen it, because the leaf would have been purple. Says Hughes. Low levels of these same new pigments are also responsible for leaves that look orange, she explains. Under a microscope, you see lots of red freckles. So why are trees bothering to create costly red pigments in leaves that are almost done for? Hughes says scientists don't have a lot of answers. Protecting leaves from light. One possible explanation says that the red pigments basically act as a kind of sunscreen for the plant, to help it cope with excess light it suddenly has to deal with when chlorophyll activity is declining. This is known as photoprotection hypothesis. All the physiologists are convinced of the photoprotection hypothesis, says Suzanne Renner at Washington University in St. Louis. There are a lot of high-tech biochemical, physiological experimental papers showing that one function of red pigment is photoprotection. She notes that Europe gets less solar irradiation than the northeastern United States and has fewer red trees, while she thinks is a suggestive correlation. And some evidence suggests that the red pigments are protecting the tree's ability to recover nitrogen from the leaf. One study of yellow mutants of 3 deciduous species, for example, found that more nitrogen was left behind their yellow leaves than in normal red leaves. What's more, tree species that live with nitrogen-fixing bacteria, which give them abundant nitrogen, generally do not turn red. But not all researchers are convinced. Evolutionary biologist Marco Archetti at Penn State University points out that a relatively small number of tree species have red leaves. I think it's about 15% or more or less. If you look at all the trees in the world, he says, if the red color was for protection against excess light, why don't more species need photoprotection? Enter the aphids. He thinks it seems more likely that this trait co-evolves from insects. It turns out that insects that lay eggs in the fall can tell the difference between leaf colors. And Archetti's done research showing that on apple trees, aphids avoided trees with red leaves, preferring those with green or yellow leaves. There are few aphids on leaves with red colors, he says, and in the spring, newly hatched aphids were less successful on trees that had been red, suggesting that aphids may have had good reason to avoid putting their eggs there. He's also found that reddish colors are found in wild populations of apple trees, which have contend with more insect invasions, but not in cultivated varieties that get sprayed and tended by farmers. All of this has led to hot debates over the years. According to Simcha Levyondan at the University of Haifa in Israel, who recently laid out the evidence for competing hypotheses about the functioning of red leaves. Past discussions of all this were not always polite, he says with a laugh, adding that in science, it's not unusual that, as you progress, you have more new questions than you had answers. He personally is interested in the possibility that the red pigments may have antifungal properties. Parking lot science. While some tree species have leaves that always turn red, and others have leaves that invariably turn yellow, Hugh notes that a number of species are more flexible. Those are the ones she finds particularly compelling, and these days she often finds herself pondering the trees in parking lots. In a lot of parking lots, you'll notice that they have trees of a single species, but some are yellow and some are red and some are orange, she says, even though they're in the exact same sunlight and the exact same temperature. Outside one furniture store, she found that willow oaks with red leaves had fewer scale insects compared to willow oaks that were yellow. Lately, she's been growing different oak species and feeding the trees different amounts of nitrogen to see if that affects their color. She's also been studying sweet gum trees, which can turn red, but also all the other fall colors. You'll have a single tree and some branches will be purple, and some will be yellow and some will be green, she says. I feel like that species is a fun clue to work on. What's the difference between those branches? She says a lot of her students at the university assume that scientists know everything there is to know about something as common as a red autumn leaf. I mean, you might think we know everything, she says, but really, there's just not enough people studying these fun mysteries of life.